Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to be looking at randomly generated loot boxes. This is a request from one of my followers, so I hope it's helpful. All right, let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start by creating a pickup controller, and this is going to be a simple object. I have a controllers folder. I kind of like to put all my different controller objects in here, and this is going to be no different. We're going to call it O pickup, and O pickup is mostly just going to manage all of the similar characteristics of all the items that are going to be able to be looted. That's essentially what that controller is going to do for us. So we'll start with a create event, and this is so simple, you guys. I mean, I feel like it's simple. Maybe it's a little more complicated than what most people do, but this is kind of how I do it. This is what makes sense to me. So I'm going to make a picked up variable equal to 0, and then I'm going to make a destroy action, which is basically what's going to happen, what is going to happen after the item's been destroyed. Usually you could put any kind of sprite here that you might have that sort of indicates that it's been picked up, you know, like a pickup sort of effect. And I have this animate effect script that I use to animate particular sprites. It takes the actual sprite, which is going to be like a coin pickup effect, the X and Y coordinates of where this effect is going to start, and we're just going to put it on whatever X and Y coordinates of the object being looted, the image speed, and whether or not this object has depth. And this is a simple script here that I wrote, and yeah, it's a simple function, animate script. It just takes these arguments, which is essentially the sprite, the animating sprite, and you could see really down here is where everything really kind of happens. It sort of adds this instances layer. If you have the instances layer, it creates an animation effect object, and then you have your the sprite that you've selected here, that you've called out, the speed at which that sprite's going to work on, and then it just adjusts the depth of this animation to kind of be in front of everything. And then the animation effect object is really just a simple object called animation effect. It only has one event, which is the animation end, which is basically just destroy. That's basically it. So to summarize that, you're basically just calling a sprite, you're picking the position you want the sprite to exist in, and as soon as that sprite is done animating, it just gets destroyed. So maybe there's a cleaner way to do this, but this is just the way that I've done it for years. It just makes it much easier to be able to quickly animate a full sprite. And what this looks like is basically just a simple animation that just kind of occurs, and it's just a couple frames. We start off with something really small, it kind of pops, goes down, and then sort of expands. And I mean, this isn't the best looking sprite, I'll be honest. I mean, you could probably make up something better, but for the example, I thought this worked just fine. So essentially, you're just making a little animation, and this is not necessary, right? This is just something that I thought looks good when you pick it up. It's completely optional. It's not necessary for this to work, but I definitely suggest having some kind of pickup animation to occur. And if you have a sound, this is probably a good place to put that sound too. If you want all of the items being looted to share the same sound, remember this is going to be a parent object, so every object being looted will have this animation play, which for me that works. If that's not the case for you, then just don't include this destroy here. You know, don't animate it here. So then we're also going to want to have a collision with our player. So we're going to have a collision with the player. When the player collides with this item, we are going to run an event within that object, which is going to be the picked up event. So what we're basically doing is we're creating a macro, kind of, you know, variable equal to 0. And when the player collides with any pickup child item, we're gonna run that item's picked up event, or 0, right? But it's just easier to read when you use, you know, picked up. But picked up is just 0, so you're really just running event user 0, and that's all we need to do for this parent. So let's go ahead and create a simple coin object, right? So I have a folder here called loot, and we're going to create a new object in here, and this will just be a coin, a simple coin that we can collect. And let's add a sprite to that. So we'll come down to our sprites, we'll go into our loot folder, we'll create a sprite, we'll call it coin, and then let's just we'll do a simple coin. We'll edit this image, and it'll just be kind of like a simple yellow coin. I think it's fine. I mean, we're not going to spend too much time here on this because this isn't really a video about how to design sprites, so I'll try to keep things a little simple here. And I'm using a coin. You don't have to use a coin. I mean, whatever item that is getting picked up, you could essentially just draw it here. So that kind of gives it a little bit of a glow. And I'll show you guys a real quick way to do some animations, right? One of the things we could do, and this is a little trick I learned, what we could do is delete this, right? And then we're going to just press Control-C, Control-V, and just copy that, press play on it, right? So now the sprite is actually playing, and we're going to change to a round brush, okay? A bit bigger than the canvas itself. And I'm just going to draw from the bottom left. This is way too big. From the bottom left and just kind of cross over. So I'm going to hold my left mouse button and then just draw as this thing is playing. Watch. See that? So now we're getting kind of a flashing animation, and we could probably lower the speed of this because this is it's going extremely fast. And if you don't like it, right, if you don't like the way that it looks, you could always just delete it and then maybe do it again. We could probably just add a couple more frames, and that kind of slows it down. This is just a quick and dirty way to do an animation, right? There's obviously a more optimized way to do it, but this is just see that? Just a really quick way. And then we can adjust the opacity on that a little bit. That looks good for now. Like, that's fine. And then let's set this origin in the middle center. So we have a little coin. We can add that sprite now to our object. So we have an object there. And then let's just go to our map, and let's add that pickup here. And I just want to see what it looks like in the game. I think that looks pretty good for now. I think I want to increase the opacity of that shine just to really help it stand out a bit more, so we can increase it. And we might even just go a lot more just to really make it bright. Look at that. I like the way that looks. All right, cool. So we have a little object there. Let's go ahead and work on the coin object. So the coin object is going to have a parent, which is going to be our pickup. So it instantly inherits, as you can see, it's going to automatically inherit a couple things. let's go into, I mean, if you'd like, you can do a step event here and sort of manage how this coin is going to act every frame of the second, every frame of the game. So this is a good place to perhaps make a step event to have it bounce or do any of that type of work. But what we're going to do here is really just flesh out the user event, which is going to be user event 0. So if instance exists, whole player, we can play some audio. I'm gonna play a little audio here, and I have a little sound for pickup, which I'm just gonna put in there, and that just sort of plays the audio. And then I have a global variable called player loot. I'll show you that in a minute, and we're going to increment that global variable by 1 because we've gotten this coin, and once we've received the coin, we can go ahead and just destroy the coin, so we don't continuously give the player coin. And if you look at my game controller, I have a game controller that's running. The game controller has all these global variables, and I'll probably make a separate video about this, but I have a game controller that runs in the very first room of this game, this room being the initialization room. It's just an init room. There's nothing in it except that game controller. And once this room loads, it's just basically going to go into the very next room I send it to, which is going to be whatever room order I have. At the moment, I'm sending it to my 6th level of the game, just because that's the level that I'm currently debugging. But essentially what this game controller does is it sets up all these global variables, and right now global.player loot is at 0, so the game starts with 0 loot. And we're just going to increment that by 1. And then I have a player GUI, which basically draws those global variables to the screen. So we can see here we're drawing our player loot to the actual screen. And that's how we see what our current loot is. All right, so let's go ahead and just run this. All right, so we got our game running, we got our coin here, we got our little flash animation happening, and we walk up to it, and as soon as we collide with it, it disappears, it gets destroyed. It plays our animation, and as you can see by the top left, the GUI up there, the coin is definitely incrementing. So that's perfect. So now let's go ahead and work on making a heart, making a different loot, because we have to create randomly generated loot. So we need more than one. So in order to do this, it's quite simple. We could easily just duplicate the existing coin and just call it heart pickup, for instance. And let's go ahead and double check its event and change the event here to adjust the player's HP by 1. And I'm going to just play the same pickup sound of the coin. It doesn't really matter. And we're going to change the sprite here to a heart sprite that I created earlier. And let's go ahead and just add a couple of hearts. Let's add a couple of coins and just see if everything is incrementing, if everything is working as it should. Let's go ahead and play our game. See, it looks really good. We have the ability to pick up these items. We could pick up the coins. You can see the loot on the top left is incrementing, and our hearts are also incrementing. So that's a real simple way to just create random loot, and you can make a bunch of different things here that's relative to your game. And now I'm going to show you how to randomly generate these. It's real simple to do. Let's go ahead and delete these, and we are going to just create a simple chest. Go back to our code, and let's go ahead and create our chest. So we're going to create a new object here, create object, we'll call it chest, and we're going to choose a sprite which I made a sprite earlier, and I'll show it to you guys. It's really, really simple, but it's important when you're designing your chest to actually have 2 frames, one frame of it closed, and then the next frame is that chest open. So that's a real simple 16 by 16 origin at the bottom, and we have 2 frames, a closed frame and an open frame. And in here we're gonna have a create event. And we're gonna set our image speed to 0 because we don't want this thing to animate, otherwise it's gonna be consistently opening and closing. We're gonna set our index also to 0 so we are ensured that it is on that first frame, and our looted is going to be false because it has not yet been looted. And let's create a step event. And in our step event, we are going to attempt to identify if we've collided with our player. So we're going to do a place meeting. Add its X and Y with our player. And we're going to make sure that we have not yet been looted. And if we do collide with a player and we haven't been looted, then we are going to go ahead and set our index, our image index to 1, which is that open chest. And we're going to set our looted variable to true. So this should be enough for us to be able to walk up to it, and it should open when we walk up to it. So let's go ahead and just test that. Oh, wait, we have to actually, before we test it, we need to put it in the game. So let's put that right there. Let's go ahead and press play. All right, we have our chest here. We walk up to it, and as soon as we collide, we see that that chest opens up, which is exactly the behavior we were looking for. Now let's go ahead and create a randomly generated object. So we're going to start by creating a random pickup variable that is going to be equal to choose, which is a built-in function, and we'll be able to choose either a coin or a heart pickup object. And then we're going to actually just create that in here. So we're going to do instance create, and we're going to do it. We're not going to do it on the Y because the Y, remember, the origin is in the bottom center of the chest. So we want the origin, since it's at the bottom center of that chest, we want this item to kind of appear above the chest. So we could just do 30 pixels above the from the origin, and it's going to be in the instances layer, and we are going to create the object that is a random pick. This would be, call this like a random loot, makes more sense. Random loot. So that should be sufficient. Let's go ahead and press play here. We'll wait for our game to load. We have our chest, we'll walk up to it, and sure enough, we have randomly generated a coin. Let's load the game again, and now we have a heart. So this is how we randomly generate objects. And the chest stays open, which I prefer. That way it shows that it's been looted, and you're gonna just get a randomly generated item every time. So, I mean, some people do this with arrays. You could do this with an array, but this is just easier, guys. Like just creating a variable, having to choose a random item. I think the only drawback here is if you do have a lot of different loot, you're gonna have to go back into this chest and adjust this random loot variable to have all of your items here. But you know, if you're making a somewhat smaller game, I don't anticipate this being a problem. If you have a whole lot of items to go through, then you may want to consider having some kind of an array, or you know, get data structures involved. But this is, again, a simple way to introduce a chest in your game, put some randomly generated items, and it works really well. It's a really simple system, easy to duplicate, easily to adjust. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, let me know in the comments how you're using it, or you know, share your project in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys continue having a good new year, and I can't wait to see what you guys develop, and you know, happy game jamming, and I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. All right, thanks again for watching. Take care.